Hi, this is Ajanta ma'am. Today I am going to revise The Merchant of Venice, Act 4, Scene 1. Some of the important questions. Now, why has the Duke sent for Bellario? The Duke expected to face difficulty in handling the case because Shylock was obdurate in wanting his bond to be forfeited. Therefore, the Duke wanted to save Antonio. The Duke wanted to save Antonio, who was a friend and a fellow Venetian. Since Bellario was an experienced lawyer, the Duke hopes that Bellario's expertise on this case would be able to save the merchant Antonio. So that is the reason the Duke had sent for Bellario. Now, why does Antonio want Bassanio to write his epitaph? Now, first of all, what is an epitaph? An epitaph is an inscription on a tombstone. And in response to Bassanio's passionate outburst, when Bassanio in the court exclaims that the Jew shall have my flesh, blood, bones and all, pointing towards Antonio, he says, thou shalt lose for me one drop of blood. What he means is, Bassanio does not want Antonio to lose even one drop of blood because he feels responsible. Antonio says that he is ready for death. Bassanio, therefore, should not throw away his life. Instead, he should remain alive. That is what Antonio tells Bassanio, that he should remain alive and write a befitting epitaph for him. So Antonio chooses to die and he asks Bassanio one last thing, that to write an befitting epitaph on his tombstone. Excuse me. Shylock calls Portia, who is disguised as a lawyer, as Daniel. Now, who was Daniel? Daniel was a biblical character who is mentioned in the Old Testament, who was noted for his judgment when he was still a young man. And the name Daniel is of Hebrew origin, meaning God is my judge. Then there is a question as to why does the Duke address Portia as Balthazar, as learned doctor, when she appears in the court. Now, Portia is introduced by Bellario in his letter of recommendation to the Duke as a young doctor of law from Rome. Therefore, the Duke goes on to address Portia, who is disguised as Balthazar, as a learned doctor when she appears in the court. The next question from Act 4, Scene 1 is, why is Shylock not happy when the Duke pardons his life? So when the Duke pardons Shylock's life after the trial, Shylock is not happy. Why? Because he has lost everything. His home, his possessions have been confiscated and shared between Antonio and the state. Half goes to Antonio, half goes to the state. Therefore, Shylock is left with no means of earning a livelihood. Therefore, Shylock is very angry, he is very bitter at what has happened. He was a money lender and he has been left with no money, no home, nothing. Therefore, he is extremely angry and not at all happy when the Duke pardons his life. Why does Portia refuse to stay back when the Duke asks her so? Now, Portia has a different agenda. She needs to go back to Belmont. Therefore, she explains to the Duke that she has to return to Padua the same night. Actually, she and Nerissa, who's disguised as the lawyer's clerk, need to hurry home to Belmont before Bassanio and Gratiano return. So they decide not to take up the invitation that the Duke hands out to them. Now, in the end of the scene, why does Portia ask for Bassanio's ring? The ring episode. Now, the ring is a sort of test of his love for her. She was annoyed when Bassanio declares earlier in the scene that he was prepared to sacrifice his life and beloved wife to save Antonio. And Bassanio had given away his ring in response to Antonio's words. Remember what he had said? Antonio had said, "Let him have the ring, let his deservings and my love withal be valued against your wife's commandment." It was Portia, disguised as a lawyer, who had asked Bassanio, her husband, for the ring. Bassanio had no clue that it was Portia disguised as a lawyer. So he parted with his wedding ring upon Antonio's request. And now Portia is asking for the same ring to test Bassanio. Now, in the mercy speech, do you think that mercy triumphs over justice in the Merchant of Venice? Now, Shylock is asked, does mercy triumph over justice in the Merchant of Venice? Shylock is asked, remember, repeatedly by the Duke, Antonio, Portia, Bassanio, yet he is stubborn, obdurate, demanding his bond to be forfeited.